Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Keep Indiana Learning. My name is Brenny Coomer, and I'm very excited to be here today with my fellow innovation coaches. And today we're going to be looking at another episode of our dual book study. We're talking about wrapping up the book Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. If you've been joining us, we've had really fun discussions about this book, as well as AI for Educators from Indiana educator and author Matt Miller. There's Tim. He's always the perfect Vanna White, showing all of the books and displaying them. Kudos to Tim throughout this book study for always being prepared for that. So in this section, we're wrapping up the book. As you know, we've been talking a lot about practical AI tools, and this time it's a really thoughtful discussion about where our future lies ahead, what that looks like, and some fun but also maybe concerning scenarios we're going to talk to you about today. So Chapter 9, the Epilogue, if you're joining us. And we're wrapping up this book. I can't believe it. Tim said it before we came on that we kind of feel like we're losing a friend and wrapping this up. And it's been so much fun. So if you feel the same way, you can always go back and watch our episodes over again if you want to chat with us. But before we dive in, let's do some introductions. As I said, I'm Brenny Coomer. I'm the Assistant Director of EdTech in Columbus, Indiana for Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation. I work in a lot of EdTech spaces, supporting how technology can further UDL implementation, accessibility, and many other pieces. I'm on the Indiana Connected Educators Board. And now let's meet my esteemed colleagues, starting with Tim Arnold.
Hi, my name is Tim Arnold. I'm a district e-learning specialist with Richmond Community Schools. I spent 26 years as a 7 through 12 social studies educator. And now I'm in my current role. I'm an innovation coach with Keep Indiana Learning, an Indiana University Distinguished Jacobs Educator, and I serve as a member of the HEC Board. And I'll turn it over to Stevie Frank.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stevie Frank, and I have been in education for a total of 15 years now. And I am a digital learning specialist located in my district in Zionsville, Indiana. I am hopping and bopping everywhere. I like to explain it where I am everywhere and nowhere at the same time in the edtech space world. And I am just so excited to be here to talk to some amazing, I consider good friends of mine, and an awesome and amazing topic, and one of the best books that I've read. Actually, I did an audiobook on this one that I've listened to on AI, and so I can't wait to chat.
Awesome. I am so excited to have you both here today. Stevie and Tim did a really awesome series on critical thinking in the era of AI, and I feel like it's wonderful having both Stevie and Tim here to bookend this particular section of this book, because they've already done that and they have a lot of really good contributions to share. So with that being said, I always have an opener question tying into the themes from the section of the book we're talking about. So the one for today is really connected to some of the potential scenarios the author posits for the future and our world ahead. So we'll dig into those in more detail, but I'm curious, asking you two, if we can look into our crystal ball for the future in education and envision school and teaching and learning, what would we like to see in that futuristic world of education when it comes to AI? So what are you hopeful for, maybe cautious about, student-teacher use?
I love this question. And I would have to say what I really enjoy seeing is whenever I see AI being used as an individual tutor and as an individual coach. And that's something that I really see, I heard a lot about with Ethan Mollick's book, is we have to be critical thinkers and, critical consumers of the tool of AI and just look at it as a tool. It's not a replacement. But I think if we can really start to lean into that higher level practice with students on that individual tutor basis, coming in and giving them real-time coaching and feedback, to me, that's what really makes me excited about AI. It's not having students getting on and having them going back and forth with, an AI chatbot necessarily. It's that individualized tutor, because there's so many times as a teacher where I would be like, if I could just multiply myself times 25 and sit with every student and give them academic specific feedback and give them that zone of proximal development question, like what would my classroom be like? That's kind of where I would say what some of my biggest hopes are. Tim, how about you?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that AI is going to be ubiquitous in our daily lives very soon. It probably is already, but I think we're tuning into it more. But at this moment in time, I'm really intrigued by the effects that learning with AI will have on both students and teacher populations, both good and bad. One of the concerns, if I have any right now, is that I'm concerned that any initial or original teacher or student work that's then bolstered by or challenged by AI to improve, will teachers and students go directly to AI? Or are we going to do any of the work ourselves first? We had a conversation this week in our district. We're working on a grant, and there's two ways you can go. You can throw the question right into AI and see what you get. But if you want it to feel real and authentic and personalized, you're going to have to go back and do a lot of work with that. And so I guess my concern is, if students go directly to AI, will they ever go through that process? I think it's valuable. And so that's my concern. But on the positive side, I'm going to echo, Stevie, what you said. I think, wow, this ability to use artificial intelligence for one-to-one tutoring and coaching is where I think it's at. And that's really going to be our focus in my district in the coming year. But, we're working with students sometimes that are 2 and 3 years behind their grade level peers. And if we can make those jumps that I think we can make, then that really gets me excited.
I love it. And I'll probably echo a lot of what both of you said. That's the benefit of going third in answering that question, is that you have all the wonderful ideas and I can say ditto to most of them. But I agree that I think that we need to constantly continue to ask the question, where's the human in the loop, and really decide what we want to give AI the authority to do in our work and in our thinking, and also challenge our students to think through that too. I think it was Ken Shelton. I was at a conference and heard him speak, and he's wonderful, and talked about, what do you want to give your voice to? Do you want AI to be your voice in every assignment, or do you still want to add in some of you to what you're doing? And that really stuck with me. It is certainly an easy button, as Mollick has talked about in his book many, many times. So I think raising those points is important. But I also see the potential for the personalized tutors too. Just thinking back to my own experience, I had a couple of semesters there when I was teaching high school where I had 42 students in my class, which is a lot. It's kind of crazy.
Wow.
But I had several newcomers, and they spoke all different languages, and I didn't speak those languages. And I'm just thinking that I probably did a disservice by not being able to scaffold everything to what they needed and really support them in their English language development. And what an opportunity that AI could have been to help me in doing that and meeting their needs. And like you had said, Stevie, really just transforming and giving us the ability to do things that otherwise wouldn't be possible. So you always talk about higher order thinking in your presentations, and I've seen you talk about the SAMR model, and this is really just that redefining moment if we think about it in that way. And I think you're right, hitting the nail on the head when you're saying that we don't just want it to be there as this back and forth or really a digital worksheet. There's not a whole lot of innovation happening if we use AI in that capacity. There's a time and place for those types of things, but if that's the only way we're using it, then we're really missing out on those transformational learning opportunities for our students. So
absolutely. And I think that was something, I forgot what chapter it was in, but Ethan had discussed it within his book, where he was just talking about, if you're going to ask an AI, like what world we don't want to see is having teachers asking an AI model to come up with a worksheet that then students can go to an AI model to have them complete. And whenever we're going through that vicious cycle, a great quote, and I'm going to steal this from Dr. Saba Quidbai, I believe. And she had said, prompt the human before the AI. And so and Tim, that kind of goes along with what you were saying too, where when we start to put our critical thinking hat and leveraging our humanity and what it looks like in AI, I think that that's when we're starting to get on the right track. And that's why when I took that question, I went on AI as a tutor or an individual coach, because that is not something that could be replicated prior. And that's also, I don't know, it was a very interesting read, because I think there's a lot of great cases of use of AI, but I also think that there's a lot of misuse of AI in the classroom too. So.
Yeah. Agreed. And now that we've really gotten into some really deep thought-provoking pieces to kick this off, this is an awesome episode right from the get-go. So in speaking through that question, it really lends itself to the focus of chapter 9, which is thinking about our future in some of those scenarios. And we've kind of talked about what we want to see. So some of those scenarios, first one he talks about is really, I think he kind of coins it as being the one that's probably the least realistic for our future. And that's just getting into this scenario where the AI we have right now is as good as it gets. It's not going to keep making these exponential gains. this is, he says kind of like a denial and highly unlikely. And honestly, I feel like reading this a year and a half, almost 2 years now after he wrote the book, it's like, oh yeah, we already know that that's not, that's not the likely scenario for a future. And what did you all think about some of the deep fakes that he mentioned in that section? Because I know you talked about maybe some of those in your other series.
Yeah, the quote that made me put the book down for a while was, "You can no longer trust anything that you see or hear or read. You can't trust that it wasn't created by AI." And, I set it down for a minute, had to just think about that for a while and let that settle in. But I get it. We have tried to focus on many of the positive things, but we have to keep those concerns in mind for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that's such an important part. As an English language arts teacher, and I know, Tim, you and I, we kikied on the fact that we really, really enjoy talking about critical literacy and critical thinking in our days whenever we were classroom teachers, and that was before AI. So it's just kind of coming back to those concepts and those ideologies that are saying these are still important skills, if not more important now in the face of AI. And I think that's also something that's important to pour into our students and our learning. I also found it interesting because I feel like right now there's a big conversation going on between philosophers of AI and the thought leaders, and also groundwork of teachers, and just taking a look at the differences. Here's what we should be doing with AI, and here's what we need to be doing with AI. And yet, I'm a digital coach. I'm in classrooms every single day and in public school settings. And I'm like, wow, that's a really big ask right now for a classroom teacher. And so I am just kind of interested to punt that question to this group, because now we're talking about the future of AI. And I don't know, that's just been something that I've really kind of hasn't been sitting the best with it, because I don't want to go into a teacher's classroom and say, you're doing it all wrong. And they're like, okay, I'm just trying to use AI, right? I'm just trying to get comfortable with AI. So where do we fall with this group on saying, what kind of use of AI would you say is a good start or a good spot to be at? I know I'm putting you guys all on this.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's a great question. And I think that question has been true of many things that we've tried in education and many things that we've tried in ed tech. I try to remember that, if I go into a classroom, the person I'm interacting with, the teacher, they're not in the same spot as me. That's not that there's anything good or bad in that. We're just at different spots. I've got X number of years. I've seen a few things. There's some things that are brand new that I don't know about. But I can't expect them to be on the same part of the path that I'm on. So I'll give you a quick example. We adopted some online materials a few years ago, and I had a teacher that was so over the moon excited, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm glad we have it, and I'm glad it's going to be a good resource for you, but my goodness, there's so much stuff out there that's better than this. But that person needed that moment to work through that stuff themselves. And so I got to try to honor that. So the phrase that I use is patient persistence. I'm going to keep nudging, for myself and for others, because we're all at different spots.
I love that. And Stevie, that's a really good question. I love that because I don't know if I'm necessarily pausing and thinking through that question as often as I should be. I've been leading an AI pathway with a group of teachers in my district this year. And selfishly, that's been really refreshing for me because they've pushed back on some things that were good for me to know that we're not quite there yet. And it's a range of teachers from a couple of years of experience to people who've been here for 20 plus years. So it's been a really insightful group and we've had good conversations. And I guess my answer is maybe a non-answer to your question. And that's that the more practice I give them with the tools and the more examples I show them from each other, or even just giving them the space to talk about it, the more information we all kind of get on how they're using it, how they find it to be helpful. And then next time we meet, there's even more ideas that are expansions of that. So it's kind of tying in with what Tim said, I guess, and being patient. And I think just giving them the space to practice and fail forward and let them know that you're there as a sounding board has been really helpful.
Oh, I love those insights.
Yeah. So awesome. I love it. And I think that not that we're I'm great at giving advice to everyone, but if there's anything I've learned from that, it's just giving teachers a chance to tinker and play. And then even just recommending this book too. And like you said, Stevie, it's a really good audiobook, and he's kind of fun to listen to as he reads it. And even though it's not tons of like teacher focused bits in every single chapter, I think the chapters that even aren't necessarily education focused have some really good takeaways. So
I know, I felt like I listened to it with a lens of, I was like, if I was to do a book study with my teachers, I would even just do chapter 8 and maybe even 9, because I felt like both of those chapters were really individualized to education and teachers. And like, here's boots on the ground specifics, like what we're talking about and what we're not talking about. And I don't know, I found those 2 chapters to be the most meaningful I loved the whole book. And anytime you ever get to hear Ethan Mollick speak, and he actually was a keynote speaker at ISTE this past summer, and that I was able to listen to and go to. And I was fangirling the whole time. So that was phenomenal.
Same. That's when I bought my copy of the book, is 5 minutes after his keynote. I marched down to that bookstore and was like, I'm taking this. Love it. Loved him.
Yeah.
And I would be curious, if we give teachers those chapters that you mentioned, like what their thoughts are and what they agree with. Maybe even coupling it with Matt's book too, to see how they line up in their perspectives. So shameless plug, use this with your teachers, especially these last few episodes that we talked through those sections of the book. So in thinking through some of those scenarios, and we agree that scenario 1 is probably least likely, but slow growth, scenario 2, exponential growth, scenario 3, or the machine god, scenario 4, which is probably one where maybe Tim had to sit the book down and go do another lap. He says he does that often when some of these scenarios pop up and you're like, I don't know if I want that to be our future. What do we think about those? My mind immediately went to like Skynet and Sarah Connor and things like that with scenario 4. But scenario 3, I think, was very interesting. And specifically, I wrote down as one of my quotes that perhaps AI companions will help us all achieve goals that were previously out of reach. So that really ties into even what you had opened us with, Stevie, for this section.
I think that's just been kind of my viewpoint on AI, is taking a look at AI, which is why that was one of my examples of taking a look at saying, like, what transformative purpose can AI have on education? I also found it very interesting through the novel that I really understood how the decisions we make in education right now, the ethical repercussions even of what it looks like, how we use AI. So if we lean into AI as like a coach or as a thought partner, rather than just as a replacement for our thinking or writing, then I think that's when we're really starting to level up ourselves as a society and our students up to be able to then interact with the chatbot and see what that experience is like for them. And I'm hoping that we're starting to move into that, lens a little bit. But again, I just started this journey 2 years ago with everybody else. And I don't want to call myself an AI expert by any means, because I feel like I'm just 2 years in. And I tell you what, whenever you work with a team of AI experts in the Microsoft field, you learn very quick how little you really do know about AI. But all of that just to say is, I think as long as we are on our journey somewhere on AI, whether it's picking up this book or listening to it on audio or whatever that looks like, I think we're doing really great things, regardless of what level of use that is. Tim, what do you think?
I think if I were king for the day, I would say we would probably be better served with some slow growth. I'm just not sure that's possible.
Yeah.
I think the exponential growth is going to be here. And what I mean by slow growth is slow, manageable growth over time, because Mollick says that could equal, faster scientific discovery or increased productivity or more educational opportunities. That kind of goes back to my opening statement about, will we have to actually know or learn anything? And I think that slow growth affords us the opportunity to figure some of those questions out in education. But I got to tell you, this exponential growth, there's 2 things that come to mind. One of them is one of my favorite Indiana authors is Kurt Vonnegut Jr. And he would write about stuff just like this. And he would say in a fun and interesting way, gosh, where's the human element in all this? And what could these changes potentially do to us? So I'm missing his voice. On the other side of that coin, I was just yesterday reading about this school, the Alpha School in Austin, Texas, that's using these one-to-one tutoring things that we're talking about. I see heads nodding, and they're showing on average over 2.5 times normal growth per year, and their top performers 6.5 times growth per year, and in 2 hours a day. So their school day is 2 hours a day with these focused AI tutors, and then they're doing all these life skills type of things the rest of their school day. So I got to know more about that, right? That's something I need to go dig into. I think there's another one in Brownsville, Texas, and one in Miami, maybe. I think there's 3 of them in the country. But that's the kind of stuff that the exponential growth could lead to, and to see if we can scale something like that, for our own districts.
Agreed. And I like how he worded it where the genie's already out of the bottle and there's no way to put it back in. And there's been a lot of educators that I know I've talked with, and I'm sure you all have talked with, and they're very hesitant on use of AI. And it's I don't know, I'm not really quite sure. And, the way that I've described it is the train has left the station. It's already gone. We got to jump on at some point just to see where it's going. And the longer we wait on that journey, then we're further and further behind. And so that's been my big plus point. I know with some of our educators, around the state even, that are very hesitant about what utilization of a tool like this looks like. And I know just as a state speaking, just specifically for Indiana, we just all adopted a literacy curriculum. And so now wrapping our minds around the science of reading. And, I feel like that's been a big way too as well. I really have enjoyed taking a look at some of the different AI tools with reading and giving them that academic feedback right away, giving teachers analytics and data that is digestible, because I feel like there's also so much data out there where it's and as Ethan described it, there's just data overhaul right now. There's way too much information out there. And so now with it, when internet first started, everybody was like, oh, wow, this is huge. But now it's just to that influx where we need to pour into those skills of critical thinking and going through, and the lateral reading skills that we talk about where, am I fact checking everything that I'm seeing come across my screen, because we can't trust it anymore. So it's just very interesting to see where education is going to land and how thoughtful can we move. When he mentioned the calculator in a couple of chapters back too, that was able to have a longer time and a longer runway than I think AI is going to have. So I kind of agree with the group where I would like it to be slower than what it is, but it is on this movement of exponential growth, and it's very interesting. So if you do not follow him on Substack, that's where he's really kind of found himself now. So if you're not on Substack, that's how I get his information now, since I think it was published in 2023. So it's just really interesting to be oh, wow, I can't believe that the AI just did that. So that's been helpful to know as well.
Agreed. And his Substack is great just because he's so open in the use cases that he shares from him personally, professionally, and then even the ways that his students are using AI and challenging and pushing its limits. And I love reading it. I just think he's hilarious too. His sense of humor is wonderful. And just even some of the corny jokes and things that he puts in the book are great. But I agree with you, Stevie, that it's nice to see the ways that he's even evolved his thinking from when this book has been published and some of the questions that he's asking now. And I agree with you that the train has left the station. And I think that the key part is in conversations with teachers, and I know I'm guilty of this myself too, is sometimes getting so hyped up and excited about something that I'm not as open in my conversations with them in my criticism of these tools, or the questions and curiosity I have about it that isn't just hyping it up in the positive. So I think I almost need to be more open in saying that with my teachers and encouraging them to say that, you can ask, you can be critical about AI in the classroom. And not want to bring it into everything, and that's perfectly okay. But refusing to acknowledge that it's a part of our future is a different issue, right? Even just some examples in this book highlight all of that. So totally agree. So we're getting closer to our time, and I know both of you have very, very busy schedules. So I wanted to kind of start to wrap this up, unless you had other bits to share. There's a quote from the Epilogue that I wanted to definitely include in this little broadcast that we're doing, and I think it really sums up some of what we've said today. And a good final note, maybe Kurt Vonnegut would agree with this too, that the Epilogue on page 212, he says that AI is really going to act as a mirror for us, reflecting our best and our worst qualities. And it's important that we continue to ask these questions and reflect often. And if anything that we've talked about today, it's certainly been that. And we've even modeled that in our conversations. So any final thoughts before I close this out?
Yeah, I would just say the other one that grabbed me there was AI is a co-intelligence, not a mind of its own. And I would probably add yet. That's the part that keeps me up.
Well, what did he say? You have to, in order to truly understand it, you need 10 hours back and forth with an AI model, and then 3 sleepless nights. And then you'll really start to understand a little bit about what it is. I would say just exactly from that, use it. Just start utilizing it more. Start taking a look at it of different ways that you can utilize it into your everyday. But again, it is a co-intelligence. It is a tool at the end of the day. And how and where it goes is dependent on how we as humans decide to use it and decide when not to use it, and being thoughtful about those choices. And I know those are some really big thoughts because I'm thinking about my teachers that are like, Stevie, I'm just trying to make it to the end of May. We've got a couple more weeks. And so there is definitely space for that. But those are just some big thought points. So hopefully if you're listening to the series, maybe it is in the summer and you do have some more capacity in your day to think about some of these big thoughts and ideas. And something I love about this group and the digital learning coaches is that we're more than happy to reach out. So if you're ever struggling with, I don't even know where to get started, this is an amazing professional learning network that we would love to partner with you on for sure.
Absolutely. We welcome those questions. And I kind of feel like I was doing a plug for your guys' other series this whole episode, but that's also a really good place to start too if you want some really good resources to help frame those conversations with your students. Stevie and Tim did a really awesome job on that series. So thank you all so much for joining today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and digging into this book. It's wild that we finished this one. So I do have a few lasting questions for our audience to ponder. Certainly address some of the questions that we mapped out in our conversations, but what have been your experiences using AI, maybe before this book, during, and now after that we finished this thought-provoking book by Ethan Mollick? And what are some of your most profound takeaways from this book? And how will you plan to leverage co-intelligence in your life, work, school, moving forward as a result of this book study and maybe conversations that you've had with your colleagues? So think about these. Reach out to us, as Stevie said, if you have questions or wanted to have a thought partner. We welcome that. We have many more amazing discussion, resources, and ideas on our YouTube channel, as well as on the Keep Indiana Learning blog and website. We have another episode in this live stream where Tim's going to lead us through a discussion of chapters 6 and 7 of Matt Miller's book. There, see, he's always ready. He's always prepared. And that's really going to be an awesome chat. Looking forward to that. But that is what we have for you all today. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day.